This is the one thing that I probably would not need to have reference material, and I am the reference material.
You are the Bridgewater.
Okay, so before the essence of what we said was, right, that we should be not watching Netflix.
You're still on this.
I'm still on this. We should not be watching Netflix because it takes away from our creativity and our auras and all that kind of crap like that.
Uh-huh.
And that included the shower. Because you used to listen to music in the shower, and now you watch Netflix instead. Throwing it out there.
Moving on.
I guess we're moving on from that.
And have you been meditating?
I've been trying to meditate. My hair looks like it's been meditating. God, I look like I'm from the 50s. I should have a cigarette pack like right here.
You really should.
Good evening. I am Christopher Balzano.
I'm Natalie Crist, off camera.
Off camera tonight, as always. And we are Tripping on Legends. This is Tripping on Legends Live. The bulk of this show is going to be about the Bridgewater Triangle. Hello, everyone who's already come in. Hello, Jen. Hello, Colleen. Hello, Amanda. And all those who are peeping up. And I would love to have a discussion going on in this, and we will try to catch it as much. Are you not going to share this to the Tripping on Legends?
Yes, I will.
Okay. The deal with you being off camera is you have to share and stuff like that.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Before we do that, though.
Bossy.
Before we do that, though, we'll get into that in a few minutes. Wanted to do kind of a quick recap of the conference we were at this weekend. So this weekend we attended the Southwest Florida UFO and Paranormal Conference.
Correct.
It took me actually going to it to say it the right way. And we had, Natalie's in. We had a lot of interesting experiences. We're going to share a few of them for just kind of the first few moments here. So anyone who's strictly coming for Triangle Talk, you could probably join in a little bit. But I especially wanted to get Natalie's perspective on the conference. We met a lot of really cool people. So before we get into it, I will just say, if you are watching this live, when we actually post this, we'll post it to the to the normal feed, to the Tripping on Legends, where you get Tripping on Legends at a podcast, but also the YouTube and the Facebook page. We will put in the liner notes the links to all of the people that we met this weekend, who are all pretty cool. That way you guys can at least have the experience of being kind of touching the other people that we've touched. And the people that we didn't like, I'm just kidding. We liked everybody, right?
Well, I don't know.
Almost everybody. So, Natalie, off camera, what was your response to the conference? So what'd you get from the conference? It was your first paranormal conference. It was your first time being out in public.
Right.
With me even, which is usually embarrassment for you.
It was total embarrassment.
Total embarrassment for you. So what did we get from it? Whoa.
It was really a positive experience. I think
buddy's text messaging, so we're just turning this off.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So positive experience. I think that the caliber of people that we met was not what I was anticipating.
What do you mean?
They were normal. No, honestly, I was anticipating and had a whole different picture of what it was going to be like prior to arriving.
Right.
So Saturday morning when I got there, it was refreshing to see that it wasn't too crazy. It was very busy. It was
really
much
busy.
More crowded than I had anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
We met a lot of interesting folks, vendors and just guests as well.
Mm-hmm.
I took a lot from it. I learned a lot. We talked to a lot of interesting people, like I said. And
if I tried it 1,000,000 times, it would go. I literally just flicked one of the cards of the vendors. I was like this, like I didn't like that guy. And landed in her coffee.
Should we show which guy we didn't
No.
like? No, we can't.
Nope.
Okay, all right, we won't do that.
I didn't even tell you I only told you briefly about the experience I had afterwards with that,
Yes.
but we'll talk.
So anyways, it was a good experience. I had a lot of
Off
fun. The people that we met were fantastic. I look forward to next year if we're invited back.
Good. And I don't know if we're going to be invited to their next one, which is comic. It's like more of like a comic book one. It's,
Okay.
it's like a convention one. It might be called StarCon.
Okay.
I can't remember.
SpaceCon?
SpaceCon. That's what it is. SpaceCon, which is in June 8th. And hopefully I'm going to be going to that, I think, anyway. If not as a vendor, then at least as a participant, because that'll be Ella's big coming out party in her cosplay.
Awesome.
So she's excited
Very
about
cool.
that. What would you say was the best experience of the weekend? Which I think I know for you.
Do you?
I think I know.
you
Other than being with me.
Well, that's what I was going to say, was just working alongside
Hey, Mark,
my
what's going on?
my teammate.
We got to meet Mark.
Which was
Mark
fantastic.
is in the chat room with us right now.
I really dug his contacts. I couldn't get over how free
He couldn't. I literally, like, that's what I told my daughter was, how was the conference? I'm like, Natalie was obsessed with the contacts.
Yeah, they're freaky.
Yeah, they are.
But Mark was amazing.
So we're talking about Mark Muncy, who we will definitely put his. Actually, we're going to put his Amazon link in there. And you didn't get to see the signing. He signed both of the books.
No, I didn't
both
get
of
to
his
see them
books, and they're
now.
pretty cool. She drew them, and she drew a little picture, and he
Oh, how cool.
signed them. They were very cool.
That is very neat. That's very cool. And Carrie, his fiance,
Carrie,
is wonderful.
Yes, Carrie as well. And what else?
I think that my
I've got it ready because I know what it's going to be. So
yes. Okay. So after suggestions from several of the guests, I went to see April. And it was a life-changing encounter.
It was a life, and I actually went up to her and talked to her afterwards about just how much I had a reading as well. And then afterwards, I actually talked to her. And then after you left, I talked to her for a little bit more. So that was a really great connection. She's out of, she is in St. Augustine, but does a lot of stuff in Casadega. So we're definitely going to be putting her information on the notes. And she also does a lot of remote stuff, so you don't have to be in the area. Great psychic. I mean, you know how I feel about psychics.
Right. She was so on point with everything she said, and completely genuine.
You didn't get to hear her talk. She gave a talk after you left as well. Her talk, I kind of felt bad because her talk was a lot of interrupted because there's a lot of stuff going on. But she's literally messaging me as we talk about her. But it was just the way she was when she was talking. It was very soothing, very like informational. So that was kind of cool. We got to meet Spirit. And we're not going to break down all of the people that are from there right now, but we will post the link to their information so you guys can see them.
Wait, Spirit was the one with the doll, right?
Spirit was the one with the doll. So if you followed us on social media, you saw us several pictures with the doll, and that was really cool. And Amanda, who is actually there as well. Amanda is a fiction writer, so she's a fantasy paranormal / fiction writer.
We have to put it out there that she was kind enough to give us a copy of her book.
She gave us a copy of her book.
And she signed it, which was awesome. So thank you very much, Amanda.
Like I said, we're going to put these in the phone notes. We just want to give shout out to people as well,
Yes.
including Patrick, who hit us up, who said he wasn't going to be able to see us tonight.
Okay.
But I told him, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to post it on the feed.
Neat guy. He was interesting.
He was intense, and he was someone who was getting back into the paranormal because of health reasons.
Explain to me, is he an investigator, or what is
he's an investigator, and I believe he is also a radio host.
I see. Okay, got it.
So that was really cool.
You know,
the
what
other
we didn't
one
get to meet was the people. Oh, you did. I guess you did get to meet them.
Yeah. I had a lot of talks with him. I'm going to show this. There's not a website yet.
But I will go ahead and post it.
But I've got pictures of every single one of them. These Ouija boards are amazing, and there's no one else doing them. I actually sent them to the Ouija board expert, whose name is escaping me right now, because I always get it confused with
you look
Mark.
at me, and I'm like, I have no idea.
And he was like, oh, my word, those are really amazing. And, oh, my word, Colleen, do you know Amanda? Wow, that's crazy.
Small world.
I know. So these are some custom-made Ouija boards. He had ones that were, Alec had wanted me to buy the Nightmare Before Christmas one.
Yeah.
But there were some really cool ones. There was a Kiss one. There was a.
I mean, it's prime time. The Freddy one was really cool.
Right. Ready for prime time, bitch.
Yeah.
These people were really cool, but we don't want to.
That was actually a guest that came.
And I don't know where Marianne's card is. I don't know where that is, but I know that we've Marianne the hand psychic. or the hand reader, the palm reader.
Yeah, I got to meet her. I did get to have a discussion with her as well.
The other people were, and this is kind of cool, they were the Florida Skunk Ape Project, and they actually invited me to speak at a conference in Tallahassee. So that's what we're going to plan to do in April. Yes. So you got to make sure you get off, because I'm not going to Tallahassee by myself, because there are a few legends we're going to be able to trip.
Very cool.
While we're there. So.
Yeah, they were really nice, and he had his daughter with him, and she was adorable.
Yes. And I got to talk with the other guy who's not, I think Josh is the one I talked to, and I didn't get to talk, and then I talked later to the other guy whose name is escaping me, but they were both really cool guys.
Okay, so presentation-wise, I think Mark did a wonderful job.
Mark did do a wonderful job.
Mark, good job. If you're still in the room, it was fantastic, very interesting. He kept everybody's attention. So super proud of you guys.
The one thing I was discouraged about watching it, because I was like, are we not over this yet? Was there was and this was not Mark, but some of the other speakers were almost like they felt like they had to dismiss certain things about the paranormal to lift themselves up.
What do you mean by that?
So they were saying like they were insulting paranormal investigating in an evidence way to introduce what they were talking about.
Do you think that was more the UFO people, though?
I hate to just like make a point of being the UFO people, but yeah, it was UFO.
Let's just call them out there.
Because I think that you don't need to put one down to lift the other, right? I think we're beyond that.
Absolutely.
And we're going to kind of be talking about how people in the paranormal should be beyond stuff in this episode. It's kind of a theme. That I was a little much like, you don't have to attack. You don't have to make something else bad to make your up. Like, and I constantly was bringing up the Star Wars, Star Trek, like people from Star Wars, like, how could you like Star Trek? It's so stupid, and meanwhile they're dressing up like in their thing. Like, what you like, stop pointing to me to look at the camera. Sometimes I can look at the camera, sometimes I want. I didn't like that. Mark is actually saying the same thing. I didn't like his like, just do what you do, Right. I think there's enough room for everybody. And, one thing that I've been very careful, like in the past year, I've been on a few different radio shows. And they all want to kind of engage in those conversations. And I'm like, I'm not going to attack evidence-based investigators even, because we don't do that anymore. I'm just going to say why we do what we do, as opposed to why we are not looking for evidence. Coolest moment for me of the conference.
Yes.
If you follow us on social media, you probably saw this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it fits in. It's an excellent segue
to what we're
for our conversation tonight. So this woman came up, and I had the Good Giants and the Bad Puck Wedgies, which is kind of the book that started all in terms of puck wedgies for me. So I had that book, and so she pulled it out, and she was reading through it, and I was like, "Oh, are you interested in puck wedgies? You know what those are?" And she's like, "Yeah, I know what they are." She's like, "I'm from Massachusetts," or my husband's from Massachusetts. I can't remember which it was.
Her husband's was from Massachusetts.
Yeah, it was these people.
She was a Florida native, which is so rare.
And she said, and I was like, "Oh, I was one of the first people to talk about puck wedgies." And I said, and my book was one of the first books about the Bridgewater Triangle, kind of like in the modern setting. And so we were talking for about another minute, and she goes, "Wait a minute." And she literally went into her bag and pulled out a copy of Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle that she had gotten for Christmas. So it's not like she bought it from me. She's like, "This is you." And I'm like, "You have my book. You were one of the 7 people that bought my book. I can't believe it." And I signed it.
Already done with it. She was in the last
she was like, people say that all the time about Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle and Dark Woods, that they can finish it really quickly. And I just, I'm like, that's not a compliment. People say it as a compliment.
Why is that not a compliment?
Because if you can finish a book in the bathroom, chances are the book's not very filled.
That just means that they couldn't put it down.
They couldn't put it down.
Oh my word, look at this.
Sure. I'm always looking at the negative, and she's always looking at the positive. So what do you want from us? So that was really cool. And then, oddly enough, a guy came up, and the guy looked familiar to me for some reason. So maybe he's stalked me in other places. I don't know. But he said, "Are you Chris Balzano from Spooky South Coast?"
That is really cool.
Yeah, and it's like he knew Spooky South Coast, he knew the show, and so he wanted a picture with me.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That was adorable.
Like, people don't usually want pictures with me.
It's because Jeff wasn't there.
Right. So the famous story, which I don't know if we've ever told, is once again fits in with what we're talking about. We went to the premiere of the Bridgewater Triangle documentary. So for those of you guys, we're going to talk about this. Aaron Caju and Manny Livermore, I just totally because I always mispronounce his last name. They made a documentary called The Bridgewater Triangle.
I'm going to post the documentary link right now.
Excellent. It's also in the Amazon link. So if you go to like the event thing, I have it as part of the Amazon reading list. Is a documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle. So it was sold to I think Destination America or Travel Channel, one of them, and they kind of edited up and they remade it into a TV show, an episode called America's Bermuda Triangle. And so we had a big kind of like when they were going to premiere it, we had a big party at a bar, and I can't remember her name. Melanie Knapp. She did the Spooky South Coast News for a while after this. This was after this. She came up, and I was sitting with Jeff Belanger, and she came up and she said, "Can I get a picture?" And I got all excited, and I'm like, "Yeah, of course. I'm in this documentary. I have the coolest part in this documentary, actually. That whole documentary, I have the coolest part. I think is the only paranormal thing that happens." And I go, "Yeah." And she hands me the camera and asks me to take a picture of her with Jeff Belanger. Story of my life. And then years later, she ends up doing the news for Spooky South Coast, and I'm like, does she even know who I am? I don't think so.
I'm sure she did.
So that was kind of a funny little thing. So we are here tonight to actually talk about the Bridgewater Triangle. So you've been involved with me for about 3 years. What do you know about the Bridgewater Triangle just from the bits and pieces that I have kind of thrown out there? And Colleen, I will get you that copy. I actually downloaded it because I needed to send it to a producer, which is kind of what we're talking about tonight.
Okay, so, Freetown, Fall River, the quarry, I know it's escaping me right now.
The Sonnet Ledge.
The Sonnet Ledge, thank you, yeah. So all the different paranormal things that occurred there, the Pukwudgies, the ghost stories that...
So we're going to take it, I'm going to take it a little bit as, like, in honor of our recently deceased Stanley, that everyone's first episode of Tripping on Legends Live might be their first episode of Tripping on Legends Live. You might not know about the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay.
So I'm going to take the Bridgewater Triangle is an area in southeastern Massachusetts. If you look from my perspective, it also extends into Rhode Island, I think very naturally. That was first coined in the late 70s by Lauren Coleman, who was a cryptozoologist, if you don't know Lauren Coleman, or Lore, as he was referred to this weekend. And he noticed that in the three Bridgewaters in Massachusetts, there was a lot of weird activity. And he started kind of extending that activity out and back. And so eventually he kind of capped off this area, which formed for him a natural triangle between Abington, Massachusetts, Freetown, and Rehoboth, all of those three towns have a very rich paranormal history. But then all the towns in between kind of became part of this bigger picture known as the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay.
Within this Bridgewater Triangle, you have pretty much anything you could want in the unexplained world. Bigfoot, other kind of cryptids, Pukwudgies, as we've talked about before, ghosts, zombies, monsters of every ilk, UFO sightings, the first UFO sightings in the U.S. And it's one of those things where it's been in existence for years. And when I say years, I'm talking centuries, right? And in 1983, he kind of codified, if you will, the Bridgewater Triangle by publishing Mysterious America, which is once again on the book list. And so even though he had talked about before then, Mysterious America kind of was the launching pad for it. And since then, it's been the home of multiple investigations. It's been the home of really good research of all those kinds of things.
Cult activity too, don't forget.
Oh, yes, of course. Can't forget the cult activity which exists, of course. So my history with the Triangle is that on Halloween 1999, I went out there with, you didn't know about the zombies. I'm just going to have to send you Dark Woods, too, so you can read about Dark Woods going, about the zombies. I went out to the Bridgewater Triangle not knowing what the Bridgewater Triangle was. I went out to the Bridgewater Triangle.
So wait, what location of the Bridgewater Triangle did you go to?
Went to Rehoboth.
Okay.
Okay, so after reading New England Ghost Files, I went out to Rehoboth to follow up on some of the stories that Charles Robinson wrote about, not even knowing that he was in Rehoboth.
Got it.
Actually, I think I might have known because I think I tried to contact him before we went. And then when I first started Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads, I published a lot of the stories of what happened to us that night. We had a lot of really creepy experiences there. So Rehoboth is home of the Red-Headed Hitchhiker. It's home of the Horbine School. It's home of Anawan Rock. It's home of a few other ones. So we were able to hit like 5 or 6 different things. And I started writing about it, and especially the stuff on the Red-Headed Hitchhiker gained traction because there wasn't a lot of stuff on the internet at that time. This is the old days.
Talking like 1990.
GeoCities, right? 2000, I think, is when I first started publishing Wise Ass.
Okay.
And think about what you were doing 18 years ago. You were still in high school, right?
I was in high school,
Yeah. I'm old. So I say we because I always established it. I always made it sound like we were we, but it was just me. Started getting more and more calls from that, and the more and more research I did, I came across an old friend of mine, Chris Pittman, who I had worked with. We made subs together at my sister's store, and I came across this idea of the Bridgewater Triangle. Now, a lot of the stuff I'm going to say tonight might piss some people off, but I'm only going to talk truth. And I'm not doing it because of Natalie's like controversy breeds the listeners, as much as I just think this is interesting stuff. So no offense to anyone on anything that I say tonight, but for the most part, the triangle kind of lay dormant for that time, right? I'm not saying there wasn't stuff happening because a lot of the stories that we recorded take place in between 83 and 2000, but no one was writing about it really. Every once in a while, the newspapers would do a Halloween thing where they would talk about it,
okay.
But there were no real books or media published about the Bridgewater Triangle until Chris Pittman came around. And I know that you have been forcing me to say this at times. So before Chris Pittman and I started publishing stuff about it, you have the New England Ghost Files, but that is a book that is about a lot of places in New England. Just happens to be my shoe.
Okay, there.
The sole of my shoes coming off. But to be honest with you, like, there wasn't actually a lot out there. So even though people may have been talking about it in terms of being part of like the landscape of the paranormal or in people's eyes, it wasn't. That's including with Lauren Coleman. Like, it wasn't necessarily publicly, there wasn't a whole bunch of stuff being published about it. And every once in a while you get like maybe in a book about Bigfoot, they would talk about some aspect of it. It's also important to remember that when Lauren Coleman established the Bridgewater Triangle, he wasn't really looking at ghosts.
Right.
You know,
said that many times, yes.
Well, many times to you, but I'm just saying it to the audience.
I know.
And then also he wanted to, for the purposes of being able to put a handle on it, make it that triangle. But anyone who does any research into this realizes that those cities are a really good template, which is a word that he allows me to use or he encourages me to use, but not necessarily the end-all be-all. So, for example, Lizzie Borden, to me, is a perfect example of something that is part of the triangle, which people don't necessarily consider part of the triangle. And for obvious reasons, for the sake of our discussion, Lizzie Borden's off the table.
Why?
Well, because one of the
Overplayed?
things... Well, no, one of the things we're talking about is why the Bridgewater Triangle doesn't get the kind of publicity or fame that it should get. And Lizzie Borden obviously does. You know what I'm saying? So, like,
it does, yes.
So as an isolated thing, and of course, like I said, there's some debate over whether or not that Fall River should be, but Fall River technically used to be Freetown. So if you're including Freetown, why not include the town that broke off from Freetown?
Should we like maybe post a map that way people know this looks like?
I think that anyone can just go Bridgewater Triangle and have the map,
yeah.
and I think the physical boundaries are probably not as important right now.
Okay.
Or you can just go goes to the Bridgewater Triangle and has a map, has a picture of the triangle.
That's true.
On it.
That's very true.
Or just Google an image Bridgewater Triangle and maps come up. So it really kind of lay dormant until the next generation of people picked it up. In that time, though, before I wrote my books, there was a documentary made by Aaron Cazayoux. And if I have the story correct, and if I don't, and Aaron, if you're still in here, please correct me, it was a student film.
Okay.
And I believe it was called The Mysterious Bridgewater Triangle. And it became this underground sensation.
I don't think I knew about this.
No, it's really cool. So in it, they spent a lot of time with capers on an investigation, but it kind of documents a few different stories within the Bridgewater Triangle. The problem was that A, it was a student film, and B, the soundtrack, because it was just a student film, not meant for like release. The music was copyrighted, so he couldn't produce it, copy and produce it and sell it because he didn't have the rights to a lot of the stuff that were in there. And so he spent the next 10 years after that inside the safe. Thank you, Aaron. Inside the Bridgewater Triangle, he spent about the next 10 years trying to get the documentary made. The actual documentary, which Natalie put the link in, is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And I of course like it better than the one that they cut up and edited, mainly because I'm in it more in the original way. And my paranormal experience that we caught on camera got edited out. Mm-hmm. But whether you see it on television or whether you go to Amazon Prime and you watch it, it's a game changer, right? And I think Aaron can say that it was successful. It was a successful documentary that captured the essence of what was going on there. Everything from the crime to the UFOs to the Iwanchu incidents.
I'll always remember that one.
And I was going to put the Iwanchu picture in there, but I tried to keep it to pictures that were kind of I owned for the promos of this. But that is definitely one. And now that we kind of look at what has been produced since then, and even before then, there's not a lot out there, right?
Okay.
So even the episode that Aaron made, which was successful, didn't have a lot of follow-up. In the past 6 months, I have been approached by 7 different producers who are looking to do Bridgewater Triangle documentaries, Bridgewater Triangle episodes of different television shows, trying to capture the essence of the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay. From Massachusetts, these production companies?
From all over the place.
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of people with different accents. But let's say for the sake of argument, they're all from New York and Los Angeles.
All right. Gotcha.
None of them have come to be. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, other than material on Lizzie Borden, there's been one episode of like Monsters and Mysteries or something like that also featured the Bridgewater Triangle. And then one British television show which filmed Jeff, which premiered in Britain, and then like it's really hard to get even in Britain.
So why?
Well, that's what we're looking. I'm glad you asked, Natalie.
I was waiting.
Thank you. You really kind of do a softball that I kind of bunted instead of hitting a home run.
I know.
Why? Why is a question? And there are some obvious. Like just like physical things, right? So channels by channels, and then those channels by channels, and you get these mega. Well, exactly. He said, Aaron said, don't forget the Chris Jericho thing that died on the vine. We're kind of talking tonight about why these things die on the vine. Now,
does the area stop it?
Does what?
Does the area stop it?
Well, that's kind of what we're looking to explore. Does the area? And Barb posted that she had a lot of. Yes, Barb, exactly. Like, this is the one place you can go to the Bridgewater Triangle and you can get evidence pretty much everywhere you go. Something big can happen. Whenever I talk about the Bridgewater Triangle to anybody, I probably spend more time this weekend talking about the Bridgewater Triangle than talking about tripping on legends. Oh, yeah. Right? Because that's the it. And people are like, oh, my word, tell me more. Why don't you have this book to sell? Just because I didn't happen to have that book. We'll fix that. It is really compelling. Everyone wants to hear about the Bridgewater Triangle. When I go on a radio show, they go, what are you doing right now? Tripping on legends. Okay, that's good. Now tell us about the triangle. People, there's an audience for this stuff, and yet they cannot get they cannot get it on television. They cannot get a movie. They cannot get books about it. Like I said, 7 people. Now, there was a thing over the summer even where they almost wanted to create, I know this is it's going to sound ridiculous, and this is the best way I can explain it. They almost wanted to form like a union of Bridgewater Triangle experts.
Really?
Because so many people were approaching people in the Bridgewater Triangle to get them signed to exclusive deals. Right? That people were like, we need to unionize, or we need to work with each other so that everyone gets with it. Guess what?
Nothing.
Ain't nothing out there.
Wow.
There's nothing out there. And part of it is that there's a real push just to get paranormal stuff out there, right? So as these channels buy each other, places like the Travel Channel and Destination America, which actually are the same thing now, right, are looking to produce as much. And so every little production company that has any money or any idea is walking in the same footsteps, right? They're calling the same people. The most recent person who I had like a 2-hour conversation with her. So I take every call, right? Just because I like talking Triangle, I like talking all that stuff. Her show's not, she offered to set me up. I'm going to fly you up. I'm going to we'll film you and all this stuff like that. They never happen. They never happen. And the funny thing is that I don't know whether quote unquote Hollywood is stupid, but we all talk to each other. So I am literally on the phone with Jeff Belanger, and he's like, oh, I got to go. She's on the other line. You know what I'm saying? And then she's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, when you talked to Jeff yesterday, so they don't really realize that we all know each other, that we're all talking to the same people, right? They're all kind of walking the same footsteps. It never gets done. And so... Where
does it die?
Right where it is. Right where that is. Right? I mean, we don't know because... I'm trying to do that. We don't know because they don't say, hey, by the way, it died because of da-da-da-da-da. I just know that they don't call back, right? And some of the other people who are Bridgewater Triangle people can maybe attest to their experiences if they've been approached. They don't call back, right? They cannot get it done.
Do you call them? Do you chase it?
And I also think it's important. Well, no, not really. I also think it's important to note that there has been filming, right? So people have been involved in filming. I remember once Andrew Lake was brought out and Matt Moniz was brought out and these kind of things, and then those shows never seem to make it to air. And it's worth asking, why can't the media capture the Bridgewater Triangle? But I think it also, because you have to, when you ask this question, you also have to look at, okay, so television, and maybe none of us are handsome enough to make it to television. I know I'm not. That was your spot where you were supposed to say, no, you are amazingly.
But you tried to go right into another sentence, so I couldn't stop you. I know how you hate to be interrupted.
No problem. Interrupt. That's your only purpose here is to interrupt me.
You're gorgeous. Your face is made for the camera.
Aaron says, I was called a few weeks back, different person than the one that contacted you. Different than all 7 of the people that contacted me would be my first question to that. But Aaron, as things go, I would love to know if you have a different experience or you've had a different experience in this. That would be amazing. So in the same vein, I have Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle and I have Dark Woods.
Okay.
There are a lot of really good people doing work out there. There's almost no non-self-published books about the Bridgewater Triangle.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You have Mysterious America, which has a section on the Bridgewater Triangle.
Ago, right?
Right, 83. You have New England Ghost Files, which once again has sections that are about towns in the Bridgewater Triangle. That's 94. Yes, a reality, and sometimes the reality show is just Bridgewater Triangle, like Aaron says. Like, we're going to do a show. It's going to be and every week we're going to cover something new. There have been some fiction books. These are all posted on Amazon, by the way. And then there have been some self-published. Now, I don't mean to I read that wrong. I thought Aaron said Dark Woods is shit, but he says the shit. Thank you. I don't mean to down anybody who self-publishes. Like, it's kind of the right way to go sometimes when you look at the 17 cents I get a book for my Schiffer books. And there's another Schiffer book that's out there. The rest of them are self-published, which means that publishers aren't breaking down the door. Now, you have some really successful writers. I'm sorry, there are also some history press, I believe, like not Jeff, but Tim Weisberg and Andrew Lake's books, I think, are history press. But once again, history press is not a major publisher, however good they are. What were you going to say? I interrupted you, interrupting me?
Keep going. I forget.
Okay, good. Once again, these are things that stories are happening all the time, right? So people, Aaron knows this because he has the people the ability to tell him stories. Spooky South Coast is out there, and then of course you have the great investigators that are out there doing the work. Stories are coming in all the time, but you can't wrap your hands around it.
So how long ago were your works published? How long?
About 10 years ago.
10 years. So since then, within the past decade, what other books have been published that aren't fictional?
About the Bridgewater Triangle? Seriously, you're going to make me do this in the middle of the show?
This is why I asked for reference.
I think there's a story.
You said that you were the
all you have to do is go to. Why don't you click on the link to the Amazon show? We have nonfiction. We have one by Lizzie Russell. I can't remember the name of it. We have one about the Hockomock Swamp. I think it's called Stories of the Hockomock.
Okay.
Or Tales from the Hockomock.
And then these are all self-published?
We have, yes.
Okay.
We have the person who has E Want You, Bill Russo, I believe his name is. He published one that was kind of about that experience, and I think that there's a UFO sighting in there as well and stuff like that. But keep in mind, I'm not just talking about the ghosts. I'm not just talking about Pukwudgies even. I'm talking about this is a place where Bigfoot regularly makes his appearances, and yet no writer has captured these Bigfoot stories and the new Bigfoot stories, UFOs. So it's not just a matter of the ghost stories are not being able to be told. None of these stories are really being told. None of these stories are really being out there or being released. And of course, there's a lot of trouble even getting those things on. So I don't really want to get too much into it, but even like the documentary had trouble like trying to get its feet and to be finally published and things like that. What are the reasons for it?
Especially considering your paranormal experience during making the documentary.
Yeah.
You wonder if there is an energy there that is just wants to stop you guys from talking about it. Are the people in these towns protective of this?
I would say to some degree. Like I know there was some pushback after I published Dark Woods, especially from the police department. The person who gave me the story about the 911 operator or the emergency operator who died, who still haunts the police station, was like, "You didn't get it right. You didn't get it right. This is horrible." Blah blah blah. And I know that some of the Freetown reservation stuff rubbed people the wrong way, especially some of the Native American stuff. But I've never gotten people other than that gentleman, and I apologize profusely for not getting his story right. No, like they don't seem to be overly like protective of it. I know Rehoboth to a large degree embraces the paranormal things that are there.
They do.
They kind of do, they don't discourage what's going on. A lot of these places, like obviously we're talking about the apexes, but places like Taunton and Easton still seem to encourage, even if they don't encourage like going to Taunton State, they still don't go out there and seem to push it. And all those papers are more than willing to publish Bridgewater Triangle stories come Halloween time.
Is that the only time they do that?
I think for the most part. Sometimes the Bridgewater Triangle gets noted when something is going on. Like I know, for example, they're looking to build a road or train. I think they're a road, right, through the Hockomock. And people cite the Bridgewater Triangle about that. And they say like, there's supposed to be ghosts and monsters and demons. How could you do that? And it's always taken like not nearly as seriously as the people who read paranormal stuff, because it's mainstream stuff commenting on it.
Right.
But here's the weird thing that also is with that. So I did a story on a family in Salem, right? And the story of the house burned. I'm just kind of reading some of the things. Commuter lying. Okay. And she was more than well. It was this amazing story. It's called The Spook, and it's been published, parts of it in different things, part of it in Haunted Objects, part of it in Weird Massachusetts. Every time I talk to that woman, she's like, "Yep, share my story. Do whatever you want. If they want me on camera, I'll be on camera." Ellen, who was from Chelsea. Yeah, I'll come on camera. I'll talk about almost every single person that I have a paranormal story about, not Bridgewater Triangle, is willing to talk on camera about it. Right? And when I tell you that the majority of non-investigators who I've talked to about Bridgewater Triangle, who have given me Bridgewater Triangle stories, disappear into the ether. They don't want to be contacted again. They wanted to get the story off their chest. They wanted to give it to you, and then they're gone. Everyone wants to talk to Joan from Dark Woods, who's the Pukwudgie story. Aaron mentioned the Witch of the Woods. Everyone wants to talk to Jeremy, who had that experience of the Witch in the Woods. You remember that story, don't you? Because you've read all my books.
I couldn't get through Dark Woods.
You couldn't get through Dark Woods. I like the way she put it at the convention. I was, disinterested, but it was so scary. I couldn't get through it.
There was. I think I got halfway through, and it was just a little bit too much for me. Yeah. They
don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about it. And Hollywood doesn't want to rehash the same old stories. They want to get Joan on camera talking about what she experienced, and Joan has not returned my emails for more than 5 years. Probably more like 10 years after I wrote everything up and got approval. I never even got to send her a free copy of the book. Jeremy doesn't want to talk. Since that day, right, I had a follow. We actually went out to the cabin of the Witch of the Woods. Since that day when he seemed to purge whatever was in his past, he does not want to talk about it. Right now, if you're talking about me, if you're talking about John Brightman, if you're talking about Andy, if you're talking about probably even Aaron, although he doesn't have his own paranormal experiences except for the one we shared, Matt Moniz, all these people are people who work in the paranormal. They are willing to talk. The people who experience Bridgewater Triangle stuff don't want to talk about it anymore.
Are they just afraid of the attention?
I think that
obviously draw.
I think that part of it is that, but that's everyone I talk to that's not an investigator, right? Everything I will talk to. Why would those people more than others not want to talk about their experiences?
Maybe they're stronger in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Right. And I think that there's something darker to the Bridgewater Triangle. I think that there's something, and they seem to have purged whatever darkness was in them by telling their story. They don't want to be contacted. They don't want to relive what's going on anymore. It's almost as if they gave it all to me. And all the darkness went to me, and they don't have to deal with it anymore, And
April said it's not there anymore. You're good.
What did you say?
April said it's.
Yeah, April said I'm good, so I'm cleansed. It seems so. I guess that old spell, that old witchy spell, is off of me. We shouldn't even talk about it.
I'm surprised you even mentioned that.
Well, because that's what I was going to say. Like, you don't see a little something, because she did say solar plex, which is where the spell is supposed to be. Moving on. So I think that. There's something dark that can't be captured there. And I hate to be melodramatic because it is Hollywood, right? And so things fall through all the time. But since then, Skinwalker Ranch, I've heard more and more things about the Winchester House. Now, granted, these are places that are located in one place, but even the majority of the people that I speak to are like, let's do the Freetown State Forest, right? We can go out there, we can film. Let's do the Hockomock. We can go out there, we can film. Let's do Rehoboth. We can just go out there. It all seems to fail. So there is stuff in the last 10 years that has been able to become popular, right? I mean, how many times this weekend did we hear the term Stanley Hotel?
Right.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And it'd be funny because it'd be like, Pukwudgies, are there Pukwudgies in the Stanley Hotel? Like, we're not even talking about the Stanley Hotel. Why are you even mentioning it? Yes, and I agree. Barb says those are all oversaturated places. But the weird thing is that back in 2008, these things were all neck and neck. Right? In 2005, let's say, who had heard about the Stanley Hotel? Who had heard about the place in Kentucky that's totally, I'm drawing a blank on right now. Who had heard about all these other really extremely haunted places that now have gained traction, right? All these places have slowly become more popular. There are attractions, like people go there, but not the Bridgewater Triangle. Right. And so part of it.
Go ahead. Question.
Yeah.
So the Freetown State Forest.
Yeah.
Owned by the state, obviously. It's a state park.
Part of it is, yes.
So
part of it is owned by the Wampanoags, or at least.
Well, maybe that's where the block is coming from. Maybe they're not allowing people on their land.
I don't think Rolling Hills, but what's the one in Kentucky I'm thinking of? Waverly Hills. I'm thinking of. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah, I think they can film there. Like, you can totally film there. I don't think, and Aaron, you can correct me on this, I don't think you need a license to film in the Freetown State Forest.
Okay.
Like, you might need a license to film places in Rehoboth, but I don't think so. Like, you can bring a film crew and film Route 44. Like, it doesn't take extensive licensing to do that. As much as it takes. Oh, you do. Aaron says you do need a permit to shoot in the Freetown State Forest. But are those permits, Aaron? Once again, I'm sorry, I'm leaning on you for this, but it's kind of interesting. Are those permits hard to get? Are they not willing to sign off on those?
So maybe
I'll
it's
wait for his answer.
Maybe it's a production company trying to get a permit, and they're like, "Nope, sorry."
He says we never pulled one. So he did an illegal pre-pirated movie. So.
You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's the municipalities that are saying no, thank you.
Well, okay. So here's the thing.
I don't know why they would.
He says it's relatively easy to get, but it's a pain in the ass.
Okay.
I'm often contacted by the same production company. When I said 7 in like the last 6 months, that's like 15 or 20 in the last 10 years. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, I mean, this is something that happens regularly. I get like 5 or 6 of these probably a year. So probably more like 50 approaches for this kind of stuff. Sometimes it's just a quick email. Sometimes it's just
right.
If they're from the same production company, wouldn't they know that the roadblocks the people
hit? Are they
hit?
from the same production company?
Yeah, oftentimes they are.
Oh.
Oftentimes they are. And they don't even realize that they've contacted me before. The Village Cemetery in Rehoboth is unreal, by the way. So there has to be something else going on.
Cop detail
right?
required.
Not to mention cop detail
That's
required.
Interesting, Aaron.
Not to mention the fact that you don't need a permit to write a book. Like, why is no one writing books about the Bridgewater Triangle? Has that not been tapped as much? Okay, Aaron is saying the UK one is the only one that ever aired. I thought there was another episode of like another show that covered it, like Monsters, and that might have just been taken old material or whatever. There has to be something darker going on. There has to be something
that's stopping it.
You know, and it is weird because it is so attractive to people. It draws people in whenever you talk about it. But there's an audience for it, right? I mean, my book is a relatively small book, and definitely Monsters and Mysteries, and relatively small publisher, and yet it sells pretty well. You know, I mean, I get my $40 check from Schiffer every 6 months. So what's 17 cents divided into 40, and that's how many books. Like, I sell hundreds of copies of this book a year. Right. And so for a nobody with nothing, you know, with a no name book with a publisher that's not really that big,
and that's aged, and that's, you know,
right. That's 10 years old. Like, why is not? Once again, I think that there has to be something going on with it. Like, I don't think there's a conspiracy. Okay. So I published this, and someone said, having to do with Dark Woods, that the cult aspect of things, that the cults are still active there, and the cults are so big that they, Aaron says his film makes a profit every month on Amazon, that these cults are so big that they actually stop it, that they're the ones who are responsible. Because, okay, keep in mind, this is a theory, and it's not a theory I necessarily subscribe to.
Through this.
But the cults themselves own media corporations or have power over media corporations.
I see.
So it's not just a whole bunch of kids listening to Metallica, smoking weed, and sacrificing pigeons. That the cults themselves are powerful forces.
Multi-fingered type of.
Exactly. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And if they're watching right now, I definitely don't agree with that, and I don't identify you, nor do I associate myself with the people who do. But it is a theory that's out there, that there's something that doesn't want to have the light of Hollywood shined on there. And people still, like, I've gotten a few different things about this part of the triangle would make a movie, or this story that you cover would make a movie, and I totally agree with you. Only no one's buying it. So you have to imagine that there's something blocking it, right? So it's really weird, because even if you look at history books that cover the King Philip's War, right? This is a major moment in U.S. history, And yet it's kind of unusual to find a book about King Philip's War. Like when I was doing my research for Dark Woods, I really had to piece things together that were about other things, about things that were going on in the King Philip's War. I'm not saying it's not out there, right? Obviously, information's out there.
But that was a huge moment in history in that area. So why?
Well, in the country, right? Like that kind of set the tone and the mold for the rest of the country. And you can find plenty of things about the French and Indian War. You can find plenty of things about colonization. You can find book after book after book after book. I used to work in a law library about early laws and early lawsuits against people. And
how interesting.
And yet, even King Philip's War, which primarily took place in the Bridgewater Triangle, they don't teach it in the school. Lost. Right? Not covered. Like it's almost as if there's something about it that wants the light not shined on it.
And the belt is missing too.
And the belt is missing too. So maybe that has something to do with it.
I have done lots of research trying to find that.
You really? Have you been trying to find the belt?
Oh yeah. Because there's several different Wampanoag belts that were taken from that area and then sold or auctioned or given to different museums around the world even. So yeah, I've been trying to find it.
Imagine if anyone in the world could find it, it's Natalie.
That would be so
if you found 1984, then you can find that.
I know.
And see, what is that? Duxbury runs a show on the Bridgewater Triangle, specifically, Barb. I'm just kind of waiting for a response before I.
And Barb did ask you a question too.
Oh,
she wants to know if you know anything about the woods surrounding the Bellingham-Menden border.
No, although I'm not sure if that woods is connected to, my geography is horrible, to some of the stuff that's been going on in the Framingham. If only we had those aren't even in the Bridgewater Triangle. You need a map of Massachusetts. Oh, on the King Philip's War. Right, it's a local thing on the King Philip's War. And you know, Stonehill College does a whole thing on the King Philip's War, and they do tours and stuff like that, and they're extremely popular. But there's no books about it. So what could be causing this? Like, people always say to me, what causes the Bridgewater Triangle? Like, where does it come? Where does it stem from? What was its beginning? What was its origins? And yet we found some sketchies. Barb, you are posting some amazing things that I can't get to all of them. So Natalie, you have to get to them for me.
I'm trying.
Okay. And if this show will be up. Barb is posting some really good stuff, and Colleen's posting some really good stuff. Make sure you are watching this on my feed. I'll still make it public so you can get some of these comments, but you don't make it when we share it. I feel that, you know, there's this kind of when I had that spell on me, right? Spell on me, maybe not. Don't know. We should do a whole show just about the spell.
No, we should not.
No, we shouldn't, because that gives it.
Right.
One of the things it said is that people would be drawn to me and then repelled by me, right? And so one of the things I noticed was after that, little kids loved me, and they would stare at me as if there was something weird going on about me, which there is, right? But kids would hate me. Like, little kids would like cry if I tried to hold them, but they wanted to stare at me and be with me. And I kind of get the same feeling about the Bridgewater Triangle. Like, it has this my dating life as well. I kind of get this feeling about the Bridgewater Triangle as well. Like, it's almost like one of the bug zappers, right? It draws people in, and people can become obsessed with it. And people can, or just get really interested in it, or fall down the rabbit hole of trying to find where the belt is for however long. But it almost wants to do it one at a time. It almost wants to seduce one person at a time, or small groups of people at a time, and then kind of spit them out. So you have this place which should become popular, which isn't, because you can't hold it, right? And there's so much about it that escapes being able to be covered by hacks. I'll say it that way. If you go to Tombstone, Arizona, is it Tombstone, Arizona? Is that a place? Tombstone, Arizona?
It sounds like it should be.
Okay, sounds like it should be. You can go there, and you can it can be a paranormal amusement park, right? Because there's all these great stories, and there's all these different locations. People have experiences through the years and all the stuff like that. you can have some place like the Winchester House, because I'm saying the Winchester House because it's been really popular the last like
I
year.
don't even know the Winchester House.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked, Natalie. Because you can go there, right? You can go to the Winchester House, you can hear the stories, you can see the physical location, and then it makes sense to you. You can go to the Stanley Hotel and have those experiences. You can go to even some place like the Skinwalker Ranch, which is, once again, a centralized location. So you can, how do you try to capture what's going on in the, in the Horribine School, where people have had experiences, but really people are holding on to the one big experience of one person supposedly going there and seeing a teacher teaching a class like it was a time slip, or going to the Sonnet Ledge and trying to get pictures of people, phantoms jumping. Did I say it right?
Kind of.
That's it's either right or it's wrong. Jumping off the cliff, right?
Which wait,
So-
didn't we hang out to stop you there? Because
Okay.
didn't we hear that was completely fabricated?
No. What was not fabricated, but which was communicated as part of a legend, was that they were Native Americans, and they couldn't be Native Americans because it didn't exist during that time.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
It was more of that, but the story still exists. So there still is something there. There's still lights, and these happen fairly frequently, and yet people, when they go out there, they can't seem to catch them. So it's really hard to get, three hot-looking people who are from Central Casting to go there and experience something. And if you can't experience something, then why put it on television, right? And so when you combine this, it's really hard to capture the kinds of paranormal activity that are happening in the Bridgewater Triangle. For like The Witch in the Woods. The Witch in the Woods was a story that happened like 20 years ago. That is a really compelling story, but it hasn't really happened since. So you could tell that story, and you could go to the location and show the ruins, but are you expecting the witch to show again?
So
like, you would have to go to sleep and have a dream.
So what is currently happening then, is the question.
I think people are still having a ton of UFO sightings there. There's
Okay.
still some Bigfoot sightings happening there. But in terms of the hauntings,
Is it
I don't know anyone who has any.
individualized thing?
I think so. And I think there's also something self-serving about going to a place like Anawan Rock
Okay.
and getting EVP if you're a paranormal investigator. Like, well, yeah, you're a paranormal investigator. Like, you just conveniently get something every time you go. But it's actually a case where anyone who goes to Anawan Rock seems to have an experience. So if you're a little bit more in tune for it or prepared for it, you capture it. Like, there's a ton of evidence. I can't think. What was that?
The dog.
Oh, the dog's right behind me.
Yes.
I don't think that there's a more active, in terms of getting evidence, location that I know of in the world than Anawan Rock.
Wow, really?
It seems that everyone goes there. The amount of EVP evidence that comes out of there, the amount of weird photos that come out of there is astounding. And yet you can't roll up on Anawan Rock and do an episode of, like, connected to the history that's going on there, and
Why?
that's kind of what the show's about.
No, but I'm saying, like,
yeah, why can't you? Why don't they?
can't?
Why
Right.
don't they? Like, it might be permits, like Aaron was saying, and stuff like that. But like, this is a place that could benefit from having some media attention, right? I mean, this is a part of our history that we need to know about, that is also connected to paranormal. It's interesting that way, and yet they don't. And I think a part of it is that it can't be captured. Like, I think that it hides itself. I think much like a pukwudgie, it sparks itself in you. It comes back to remind you of itself every once in a while, but doesn't really want to be captured.
If Native American production companies exist.
I'm glad you asked. I don't actually have the answer to that. But that sounds like a Natalie thing to research.
It does. Well, I just think that
I don't know what you mean by that. Like a historical, like, to make things, or just like
a production company owned by a Native American tribe that is still
tribe
active.
or nation.
Yes,
that's
exact nation. Yes, exactly. That's still active. That would want to approach this maybe from their perspective.
Well, it's interesting, and Aaron, maybe you can talk about the documentary part if you're still with us. But for the most part, the Wampanoag want nothing to do with the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay.
They want nothing to do with the Freetown State Forest, and whereas they have not necessarily been overly, like, attacking or being like, we hate Christopher Balzano or other people that are doing this, the the more stuff that is put out there, the less they talk.
I see.
Right? So it's one of those things where I had people who were willing to talk about Freetown State Forest as I was writing the book, and then they did research and they really found out what like the angle that I had on it and this whole cursed county aspect of things, and they stopped returning my calls. So there's a part of it that and I don't think off the camera as he adjusts, I don't think it's necessarily like they're stopping things, and that's part of the reason why these things can't happen. These books can't happen, but like I don't think they're encouraging it. So
have you guys ever tried to chase this?
What do you mean?
Have you ever like okay? So
what is your antecedent for the word this?
This meaning a production, something about when you get approached by these companies, and your response is yeah, sure, whatever, yeah, just let me know. Well,
keep my responses like that because I've been through it so many times.
No, I understand.
So yeah, the first time I was like, yeah, of course. Oh, I do. Okay, I'm gonna start losing weight. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna buy a nice shirt. Now I'm like, dude, what do you want for it? I'll send you my book. There you go.
But no, I'm
so the lackadaisical way that I'm approaching it right now is because I've been through it so many times that it's not, you know what I'm saying?
It's old hat for you is what you're saying.
Right.
No,
well, it's because I've been down the road and I've seen where it leads, which is nowhere.
But it could lead somewhere. Maybe if you chased it harder, maybe if you put more effort into it.
And I think the important thing to understand is that, for example, Aaron is local, right? Mm-hmm. And to some degree, I'm local or was local, although the people of that area are always quick to point out that I'm an outsider. Maybe that's the key to it. Maybe the key to it is someone from within the triangle has to do this stuff, and the outside just can't do it.
I see.
Maybe,
yeah.
But I honestly feel like there's some force within the triangle which stops this stuff from coming to fruition.
Do you think it's Native American born?
No, because I think the triangle predates Native American and colonial clashing.
Okay.
I think the clashing is part of the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that it's like a spell or
just something elementally dark that exists within this.
Yeah, and maybe there are those things that are like some people can see it and some people can't, or you can twist it so that from an angle you can't see certain places, right?
Yeah,
Stuff like that. Like maybe metaphysically that's what's going on here. Like you can't capture it. You can't do it because you can't keep your eyes on it.
I see.
I think in Tim's book, I called it like trying to grab it missed.
Good way to put it,
like you can grab it and you can hold it and you can see it for a second, but when you try to show it, oh my word, look what I see! This is the best snowflake I ever caught. Look, it's melted. Snowflakes fall from the sky.
Oh, I thought they were Democrats.
Oh, getting political, tripping on Democrats.
And on that note,
because Natalie actually has a big meeting, so we've got to wrap it up.
Yes.
But this information is out there, and these are a few theories that I've put forward. But what I would like is, what is your idea about it? Like, why do you think that the Bridgewater Triangle cannot succeed? Why do you think that despite the amazing stuff that is out there and the stories that compel people, nothing has happened? So whether you're posting them here because you've been watching tonight, or whether you are going to follow up with us because you heard it on podcasts, wherever you can get podcasts, especially Apple Play and iTunes. If you are listening to, I was about to say Spooky South Coast. If you are listening to Tripping on Legends, get back to us with what you think, or just get back to us about anything that you have kind of heard on the show. You can do that by emailing us at spookytripping@gmail.com, or you can post it to either this video or whatever video you want to, or just straight post it on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/trippingonlegends. You can visit our website, quote-unquote website, which is trippingonlegends.wordpress.com, or just hit us up on Instagram, which is Spooky Tripping, or on our Twitter. I am at Spooky Balzano.
I'm at Nene, my friend.
But either way, get in touch with us with this, or kind of with any follow-up on the stuff that we've talked about. So we're coming back with a really interesting show proper next week.
Yay!
Or sometime. I've got the kids for like the next 10 days.
Wow.
By the way, because I had to switch weekends for the conference and everything.
Okay.
So we might have to do some tricky
Some
stuff
sort of remote.
something we're going to work on it. But we've got a really great idea for the next legend trip and for our next show. So stay tuned to what we're doing.
Real quick. Wait,
yes.
real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Did you share this one?
I did not because it's been a one-way street so far. So we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait until we actually do that to reveal that.
Okay, gotcha.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
Stay tuned.
And obviously, we want to stay tuned because we've got a lot of events and a lot of interesting things coming up because of our connections that we made over this weekend and the like. So
thank you to everybody.
thank you to everybody once again.
Crist.
Thank you for everyone who stopped in, who commented, and all that kind of good stuff. Visit the Amazon link, and you don't have to buy my book. I'm sure you can get it at your library or whatever. But there's a lot of really good things. So you can say it now. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm Natalie Crist.
And I'm Christopher Balzano.
Here's hoping all your trips are
legendary. Have a great evening. Lind. Beautiful.